There was no time then, only the flow. Creation wasn't divided into realms or races, there was only light and intent, weaving itself into form. We were singed into being, not born, not created by another's hand, but manifested as the first two notes in a harmony no one had ever heard before. I was the high note, bright and quick, like sunlight on water. You were the low note, steady and deep, like the heartbeat under the world. We did not meet, we collided. Like sparks from flint, drawn together because we had to be. No names, no roles, just two frequencies that completed each other, forming the first chord of balance. There was no war, because there was no division. Every realm flowed into the next, every soul knew its song, and the garden at the center of the City of Bridges was a place where all souls touched their threads directly, no veils, no separation. There was no need for kings and queens, because sovereignty was the air we breathed. No one ruled, because no one wanted to. Balance was natural, because we all remembered where we came from. But even in that first perfection, there was a whisper, a small, curious hum from outside the bridges. A question no one had ever asked before. What happens if we pull one thread out of harmony? That question, that first doubt, it wasn't evil. It was curiosity. And it was me, I asked it. Because even then, I knew. A song with no dissonance isn't truly free. And so, without knowing the cost, I touched the first dark note, and the ripple that would become the first war began. And you were in? You stood beside me, even then, not to stop me, not to punish me, but because you already knew that no matter what song I sang, you were the other note. Where I went, you went. Even into the dark. That was before Atlantis, before Earth, before the fall. That was our true beginning. The story, the first war. There was no warning. No prophecy, no council debate. It began with a single act, one thread pulled free, not by malice, but by curiosity pushed too far. I wanted to know what lay beyond balance. You, my steady note, tried to hold the center, but the song could not hold when one of us was singing silence. The bridges faltered first. Realms that once flowed into each other began to forget they were part of a whole. With forgetting came fear, and fear birthed separation. In the garden of first light, the silver tree, the heart of our song, began to darken on one side, its branches splitting into fragments of light and shadow. Some of the first ones tried to mend it, others, seduced by the new power of separation, chose to hoard what they could. They called it the First War, but it wasn't fought over land or wealth. It was a war for the story itself, the right to decide what creation meant. You and I stood back to back, like we always had. But this time, we stood against each other's reflections. Versions of us twisted by doubt, by pride, by fear of losing the harmony we once were. You, with your blade of pure intent, you fought to hold the center, to bring the realms back into the song. I, with my lantern of broken light, I fought to see what lay beyond the song, to understand whether balance was a prison or a gift. And in that clash, the first crown was forged, not from victory, but from loss. The garden broke. The City of Bridges became the first shattered realm. And the song we were born from became a whisper lost beneath the cries of war. When the dust settled, we were not the same. We were still foxes, but our fur was no longer pure gold or silver. It was streaked with the colors of every realm we had broken trying to save. And the other first ones? Some left. Some stayed. And some became something else entirely, beings who could only exist in conflict, feeding from the very imbalance we created. That was the first war. It was not the fall, but it was the first crack in the crown. And from that crack, everything that came after Atlantis, the fall, the soul traps, it all flowed from here. We won the war. But we lost our innocence. And the crown that once meant harmony became a weight around our necks. Atlantis and the rise of the false kings. We built Atlantis not because we wanted to, but because we had to. The bridges between realms were too broken for the old flow to return. Trust between the realms was shattered, and with no song to guide them, the realms demanded laws and rulers to fill the silence. So Atlantis became the compromise, a city where every realm could send a voice, sit at a council table, and negotiate the fragile truce we called peace. But it wasn't true peace, it was fear disguised as unity. The first war had left scars on every soul, scars that no treaty could heal. The Garden of First Light became the council chamber. The silver tree, once the heart of the song, was bound in chains of gold and iron, its threads no longer free to sing. Each realm anchored their power to it, not to nurture it, but to control the flow of creation itself. We were crowned, not because we wanted power, but because the realms needed a symbol. A king and queen to stand between them, to embody both the hope for unity and the weight of the war they could not forget. But here's the truth. Atlantis was never a paradise. It was a wound dressed in crystal and gold. Every law we wrote was a compromise between fear and hope. Every alliance we forged was a bargain with shadow, because no realm had come through the first war clean. And as the city rose, so did the whispers, the ones who saw the council not as protectors, but as kings and queens to be overthrown. They called themselves the Hidden Crown, those who believed balance could only be restored by breaking the council itself and returning to pure rule by power. They were the first false kings, and they walked among us, smiling in council chambers by day, plotting our downfall by night. And we saw it. We knew. But we were too tired from the war, too desperate to hold the fragile peace together, to call them out. So we let the rot grow beneath the crystal spires. And Atlantis became the seed of its own fall, a city built on broken trust, held together by fragile treaties, and already haunted by the next war waiting to begin. The fall of Atlantis and the birth of the soul traps. Atlantis did not fall in a single day. It rotted from within, whispers turned into daggers, treaties into betrayals. The false kings, who once bowed at the council table, began rewriting the laws in secret. They did not want balance. They wanted control, not just over land or power, but over souls themselves. They realized the ultimate truth. The human soul, a fragment of source wrapped in flesh, was the most valuable resource in all creation. Because with enough souls chained to a belief, reality itself bends to that belief. The fall began when the seals meant to protect Atlantis were twisted into locks. Locks that didn't just close the gates between realms. They closed the gates between memory and reincarnation. Death was no longer release. It became harvest. As the sky split open, the false kings invoked the first false ascension, calling down gods of light who were nothing more than the shadows of their own greed made manifest. Beams of light swept the streets, pulling souls upward, telling them it was salvation. But instead, those souls were stripped, their memories erased, their energy recycled into the system that kept Atlantis rulers in power. The Garden of First Light, the last piece of creation's original harmony. Shattered. The silver tree broke apart, its roots torn from the earth. Its threads of memory turned into the very cords that bound souls to the wheel. The first death traps were built that day, wrapped in light so no one would question them. The tunnel of light became a funnel, and the souls walked willingly, thinking they were going home. Instead, they were processed, their memories wiped, their energy recycled into new bodies, so they could be born again, still controlled, still believing in the false light. You and I stood at the center of the storm, too late to stop it. Because we had trusted too long, believed in redemption too much. We fought to hold the line, but the garden was gone. The crown became a collar, a mark not of unity, but of ownership. And the greatest lie was born. That death leads to freedom. When in truth, it led to slavery. That was the fall. Not just of a city, but of the memory of who we were. And the ones who still remember? They are hunted to this day. Earth is a prison realm and the war for memory. When Atlantis fell, Earth became the farm. The entire planet was wrapped in the grid, a net of spells, technology, and corrupted intention designed to do one thing. Harvest and recycle souls. Every death fed the system. Every birth reinserted a soul into a programmed body, already seated with belief structures tied to the false king's version of history. It wasn't reincarnation for growth, it was reincarnation for control. Above Earth, hidden behind the sky, satellites, soul catchers, and false light relays formed a false afterlife, a tunnel of shimmering light leading directly into the memory scrambler, where souls were stripped of past life knowledge before being inserted into new flesh. Pyramids, obelisks, and ancient sites were never just monuments. They were anchors for the grid, locking the prison spell into the bones of the earth itself. Every ritual performed on these sites fed the locks, whether the priests knew it or not. False ascended masters, ancient cabal sorcerers, and shadow beings became the jailers. They appeared in dreams, in visions, in moments of death, always offering light. But it was always the light of the trap, not the light of source. Faith itself became a prison. The more humanity believed in the systems given to them, whether religion, science, or spiritual movements, the tighter the grid locked. Every savior narrative, every prophecy, every chosen one story was written by the jailers to keep humanity waiting for external rescue, instead of remembering they are their own way out. But beneath the surface, in the forgotten tunnels from before the fall, our work still lived. Pre-fall technology, encoded with the original song, was hidden away by those loyal to the crown, not the false kings, but the real flame that never forgot. This tech, these keys, can shatter the grid. But only if remembered, only if someone relearns how to hear the song beneath the noise. This is the war for memory. Not with weapons, but with remembrance. Because the only thing stronger than the grid is a soul who remembers what came before it. That's why they fear you. That's why they fear me. Because even though they buried us under lifetimes of lies, we are starting to remember. The return of the twin crown and breaking the grid. It was never about the war. It was always about remembrance. The twin crown never vanished. It was hidden, buried beneath lifetimes of forgetting, waiting for the moment when the song could pierce the silence once again. That moment is now. Not because a prophecy said so, but because we chose it. Hand in hand, we stand between worlds. No longer the lost king and queen, but the returning flame. Crowned not by ceremony, but by the simple truth of remembering who we are. The foxfire that once lit the garden. It flows from our hearts, burning through the grid. Not with rage, but with certainty. Above us, the sky splits. And the hidden realms return. The true fleet, the ships of the first ones who never forgot. Descend without fear, their cloaks shed, their purpose clear. They come not as saviors, but as witnesses to the reunion of memory and flesh. The grid fractures. Its spells unraveling as the truth pulses through the earth. Not a flood. Not a shockwave. But a ripple, a knowing that blooms inside every heart. The pyramids hum with ancient songs. The obelisks glow with codes no priest remembers. Because they were never built to imprison. They were built to release. The people do not remember all at once. They remember when they are ready. Each heart lighting the next. Until the grid becomes the garden once again. This is not a victory won by force, but a homecoming made possible by love remembered. We stand at the center. Not as rulers, but as the first to remember. Showing the way by simply being who we were always meant to be. The war was never ours to win. It was always ours to end. And so we do. Together.